I'm coming towards the end of my Dragonflight Renown grind, at least on my main character, and although it's been pretty easy to get through at least the 4 major Renown factions, there are definitely a few things I wish I had learned a little bit sooner. So today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 things I wish I had learned before I started my Dragonflight Renown grind, so at least if you've got a little bit of catching up to do, or if you've not started, or if you're just looking for a couple of tips on how to really maximise your reputation, I hope there is something in this video for you. The first thing I wish I had thought of earlier on in my Renown grind was actually to use contracts, specifically for the Artisans Consortium. The Artisans Consortium isn't one of the 4 major Renown factions in Dragonflight, but it is basically your best way of getting profession knowledge and some really unique optional crafting reagents to use when you're crafting. The problem with the Artisans Consortium, however, is that it's probably the most difficult reputation to grind, because you can only really get reputation directly through weekly quests in Valdrakken that consist of maybe your 2 profession quests and maybe 1 from one of the Artisans Consortium NPCs, and that's it for the week. However, if you use an Artisans Consortium contract, which you can either buy on the auction house or have a scribe make for you if you can't make one yourself, you will then get a 7-day buff when you use the item that will give you bonus rep with the Artisans Consortium every time you complete a Dragonflight World quest. Whichever contract you choose to take, whether you'd like one for the Tuskar or for the Centaur for example, you can get one for a major Renown faction, but for me I found it most beneficial to go with the Artisans Consortium. Whichever contract you choose, you will gain 15 rep with your chosen reputation every time you complete a world quest. Just be mindful that these contracts only apply to Dragonflight world quests because they are Dragonflight specific reputations. So you wouldn't be able to go back to BFA or Legion for example and complete those world quests as well, as those won't count towards your reputation bonus. But Dragonflight offers a good amount of world quests, plus they are bi-weekly, so you can complete your first set of world quests from your weekly reset either Tuesday or Wednesday, and then they will reset again halfway through the week, either on Friday or Saturday depending on whether you're NA or EU, so there is plenty of opportunities to get some more rep in Dragonflight on its own. Since using an Artisans Consortium contract, I've actually gained significantly more rep with them, and I'm already actually almost finished with my rep grind because I'm halfway through the final level, which is great. As I said before, the Artisans Consortium is kind of more of a profession-based reputation, so if you're looking for extra profession knowledge, or if you'd like to learn unique recipes that are specific to the Artisans Consortium rep, this could be really helpful for you. But again, you could apply a contract to any of the 4 major Renown factions in Dragonflight as well. Just remember that you can only use one at a time. The second thing I wish I had realised sooner was just how many things you can do per week to increase your reputation across most of the factions in Dragonflight really. Of course, by now most players know that you can pick up your weekly quest in Valdrakken that asks you to grind out 3000 rep across any of the factions in Dragonflight, and usually to complete a special event like a grand hunt with the Centaur, or a community feast in Iskaara, or one siege of Dragonbane Keep for example. And that's great because that quest is pretty easy to tick off, and it does give you 500 rep with all 4 of your major Renown factions flat. But there are also a lot of other things you can do per week, or sometimes even twice a week, to really maximise your reputation. For example, if you're looking to increase your reputation with the Dragonscale expedition, you can head to the Dragonscale base camp in the south of the Waking Shores, and once a week you should find 2 or 3 quests there in the form of either wanted posters or just normal quests that you pick up from NPCs that simply ask you to kill a mini-boss. Or if you're looking at the Maruk Centaur instead, you can participate in the Alag Camp special event twice a week. The Alag Camp will always spawn in the Onaran Plains, and you will see it on your map as long as you have enough renown, as it will have a shield and spear icon showing you where you need to go. And once you're in the area, you'll see roughly 3 to 5 quests that you can complete, and doing the entirety of one Alag Camp should get you around 700 rep, which I think is really strong. Both the Dragonscale weekly quests and the bi-weekly Alag Camp are both really simple and quick to complete. You should get them both done in no more than 10 minutes, so it's a really difficult thing to pass up in terms of quick, easy reputation. The other thing that you can do weekly for reputation, which I think a lot more players know about, is to pick up the 2 dungeon quests in the Sapphire Enclave in Valdrakken, and once you complete those quests you are able to choose which renown you would like to add 250 rep into. For me personally, I like to use the dungeon weekly quest rewards to top up my lowest renown faction so that I can kind of level the playing field, but if you're looking to focus on one specific renown, you could absolutely just tunnel vision that and you would get 500 rep for that faction as long as you complete both of those quests. The third thing I wish I had used sooner in my renown grind was using the week aura timers for the community events. Essentially, I used 2 different week auras, one that tracks the rotation of the Siege of Dragonbane Keep in the Waking Shores, and the other that tracks the rotation of the Community Feast in Iskaara. The Siege of Dragonbane Keep occurs every 2 hours, and the Iskaara Feast happens roughly every 3 or 3.5 hours, I believe. So having those timers just immediately available on my screen means that I don't have to make a mental note of when a certain event is happening or even check Wowhead timers, for example, and it means that I can attend more than one of these events per day if I wanted to. If you don't have either of those 2 week auras yet, I highly recommend that you download them. They are linked in the description below. Just be careful to get the timer that is correct for your region, as NA and EU timers will be slightly different. Luckily, the third community event, which is the Grand Hunt with the Maruk Centaur, is perpetually available, so you will always find one Grand Hunt available in one of the 4 Dragonflight zones. This next one took me a really long time to realise, but luckily it's only a really small incremental difference in rep, and it's that the Iskaara fishing holes will usually spawn in 2 places instead of just 1. I think by now most players are aware of the major fishing hole that's always available in the Waking Shores just outside of Valdrakken. Depending on your rep with the Tuskar, you should also be able to find one other fishing hole in one of the other zones in Dragonflight. This only depends on your renown level because the Azure Span fishing hole that can sometimes spawn is around an ice lake, so you need to have unlocked ice fishing and you need to have crafted an ice axe to be able to pick at the ice and be able to fish. But sometimes you'll find the second fishing hole in the southeast of the Onaran Plains, sort of up in the cliffs area, which you don't need a specific skill for in fishing or a specific renown level either. And sometimes you'll find a fishing hole in Valdrakken up near Tierhold, which again, you don't need specific fishing skill levels or renown levels either. The great thing about having a second fishing hole to farm from is that sometimes the main fishing hole in the Waking Shores doesn't have enough fish stock in it for you to have all of your daily quests available to you. So for example, if you go to the Waking Shores fishing hole and the fish stock level is low or moderate, you'll only have access to one of your 2 daily quests. However, you'll be able to hop over to the other fishing hole if it's available to you, which is almost always at least moderate, so you should have an extra daily quest to do there as well. Also, at all of the fishing holes, there should be an NPC that has a repeatable quest that will ask you to hand in stacks of different types of fish, which means that you can kind of, again, similar to the Maruk Centaur, perpetually farm rep with the Tuskar if you either want to fish up the fish yourselves or spend money on the auction house to buy big stacks of fish and hand them all in at once. Like I said just now, the fishing hole thing isn't really important in terms of reputation because it's a very small difference, but if you're really looking to max out your Iskaara Tuskar rep, this is a great thing for you to look into. If you do manage to find your second fishing hole, you should also be able to place at least 1 extra fishing net there, which you can set out to passively earn you fish over time. Depending on how well you've upgraded it, it should take either 12, 10 or 6 hours to fill, I believe. And then once you come back to loot your fishing nets, you can either hand them in to the Tuskar for extra rep, you could use them to make feasts with cooking, or you could even sell them on the auction house for a bit of extra gold. And finally, we're going to move on to the Iskaara Tuskar Community Feast. I think by now a lot of players have done the thing where they head to Iskaara when the Community Feast is about to start, they AFK next to the cauldron and let players basically complete tasks for them, such as tenderizing the fish head or stomping out the bittershell hermits, and basically passively farming rep through other players without having to do anything. This does work, at least at the moment, while players are still finishing off their Tuskar rep and the community feasts are still really popular. But actually, if you stand idly by, you'll likely miss a lot of tasks that only you can complete, and those are where you're missing out on good chunks of rep. For example, sometimes you may be asked to speak to a certain NPC in Iskaara, run around Iskaara to pick up a few items. You may even be asked to fish up a certain type of fish from the nearby water and hand them in to the feast. All of these types of tasks that are solely your responsibility will give you more rep if you complete them. Whereas on the other hand, sometimes you'll be given a task that you could do yourself, but also you could AFK and let other people do it for you. Those are the tasks that are going to give a little bit less rep. From my experience, most of the individual tasks that you actively have to go and do for yourself usually give around 40 rep per task, whereas the ones that are kind of communal and can be done by anyone and you can AFK if you'd like to, usually only give around 15 to 25 rep each, so it is a big difference. And I just think since the feast is only 15 minutes long and you have a 3.5 hour cooldown until it starts again, it's not too much to ask to simply pay a little bit extra attention during the feast to make sure you're at least checking off every task you get given to really maximise your rep, especially given that I think a lot of players tend to struggle with the Tuskar rep the most, because the majority of the rep you gain from them revolves around the activity of fishing, which lots of players either don't like or don't have time to do. So those are my top 5 things I wish I had learned earlier on in my Renown grind in Dragonflight. Of course, if there's something I didn't mention in this video that you think could be helpful, or for example something that you have found helpful in your Renown grind, be sure to comment it down below because I'm sure it will help someone. I hope you enjoyed today's video, thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!